You ever hear a siren that makes your bones ache? A sound so unnatural, so wrong, that it makes your stomach twist into knots? That's what I heard when the world turned upside down. That's the sound that summoned us. A mobile task force called Epsilon 11, nicknamed Nine-Tailed Fox, to contain something that never should have been let loose. I was geared up, rifle locked and loaded, heart pounding like a war drum. They told us it was another containment breach. Standard stuff: secure, contain, protect. Except this time the target wasn't just any SCP. It was SCP-096, the Shy Guy. And it was inside my son's school. They'd sent us to a suburban middle school that looked like every other boring brick building you'd see. Except now its windows were shattered, the playground empty, and the surrounding neighborhood warped. Trees had split apart and grown together like twisted veins. The sky hung low and red, the air thick and metallic. It felt like the earth itself was sick. We piled out of the transport van, boots crunching on broken glass. Command barked in my ear: locate and contain SCP-096. Prioritize civilian safety. Civilian safety. Yeah, sure. The problem is, with 096, safety doesn't exist. If you see its face even in a picture, it's game over. It'll chase you to the ends of the earth, screaming, clawing, tearing. There's no fighting it, no hiding, no surviving. But what choice did I have? My son Noah was in there. I knew he'd be scared out of his mind, probably hiding with his classmates and teachers. I couldn't let him die. Not like this. Not in the middle of whatever fresh hell this was. We breached the doors, a sharp, clear echoing from my teammates as we swept the dim hallways. Blood smeared the walls in strange, deliberate patterns, handprints that didn't belong to anything human. The fluorescent lights flickered and faint sobs came from somewhere deeper in the school. The smell hit me next. Copper and rot. My heart sank. We were already too late for some of them. But I couldn't think about that. Not yet. Command, I whispered into the radio. Where's the anomaly? Static crackled before the reply came. East Wing. Visual confirmation negative. Use extreme caution. I led my squad down the hall, rifle aimed, breathing steady despite the dread clawing at my chest. Every classroom we passed made my gut churn. Tiny desks overturned. Backpacks left behind. Blood pooling on tile floors. No sign of Noah. Then we reached the East Wing, and everything went cold. The walls were scratched to ribbons, deep gouges carved into brick and concrete like they were nothing. And there it was, sitting in the corner of the room. SCP-096, its gangly, pale frame hunched over, face buried in its grotesque, oversized hands. It rocked back and forth, sobbing that high-pitched, grating wail that made your skin crawl. And directly across from it, huddled behind a desk, was Noah, his wide, tear-streaked eyes locked onto mine. Noah, I breathed, voice trembling. His lips moved silently, mouthing one word: Dad. I should have been relieved to see him alive, but terror gripped me tighter. If he'd seen 096's face, there was nothing I could do. No armor, no weapon, no prayer would save him. I motioned for him to stay down, hoping he'd understand, but my heart broke as I saw him clutching something, a Polaroid camera. My blood ran cold. He must have taken a picture before he knew better. Target has a potential visual breach, I reported to command, trying to keep my voice steady. The reply came back quick. Engage suppression protocol. Neutralize any confirmed witnesses. Orders absolute. Neutralize. I knew what they meant. If Noah had seen the photo, or if anyone else had, they'd be a liability. A threat to containment. It didn't matter that he was my son. I swallowed hard, fingers trembling around the trigger. But before I could move, 096 stopped sobbing. Its head snapped up, not toward me, but toward the far window. That's when I saw it. The world outside wasn't just warped, it was alive. Massive, flesh-like tendrils slithered across the ground, piercing the sky. Screaming faces emerged from the earth, their mouths open in eternal agony. It wasn't just a containment breach. The breach had spread, reality itself was breaking apart. And somehow the thing sitting in front of me wasn't the worst monster in this place. "Team leader, we need extraction now," I shouted into the radio, pulling Noah into my arms. He sobbed into my chest, clutching me like his life depended on it. And maybe it did. But as I turned to retreat, I heard the low, guttural growl of 096 shifting. It had seen something, or someone, and it was no longer sitting still. "Go," I screamed at my squad, my voice cracking. "Get the civilians out. I'll hold it off." The last thing I saw before running was my son's terrified face as my team dragged him away. And then it was just me and the shy guy. You ever stare death in the face? I mean, really stare it down, knowing you won't walk away? That's what I did. And as 096's horrible, contorted face lunged at me, I felt the bitterest kind of relief. At least Noah was safe. At least I had done one thing right. I emptied my entire clip into SCP-096. Useless. The bullets tore through its flesh-like paper, leaving behind ragged, gaping holes that healed almost instantly. It didn't even flinch. It just kept coming, its twisted, skeletal frame moving unnaturally fast, like it was glitching through reality itself. I stumbled backward, reloading with shaking hands. My breathing was ragged, my vision narrowing. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I knew better. Running wouldn't save me. Nothing would. It pounced. Its claws were a blur of pale death, each one sharp enough to slice through steel. I ducked under its first swipe, the sheer force of it ripping through the wall behind me like butter. The sound of crumbling brick filled my ears. I fired again, pointless, I know, but it bought me a fraction of a second to dive behind an overturned desk. The desk exploded into splinters as it slammed down where I'd just been. Dust filled the air, choking me, blinding me. My back hit the wall, and I realized there was nowhere left to go. I was cornered. "Command," I gasped into my radio, coughing on the dust. "This is Fox Leader. 096 is active. I'm compromised. Request immediate termination protocol." Static. Then the cold, detached voice of command acknowledged. "Airstrike inbound. ETA 3 minutes. Maintain visual containment. 3 minutes. They wanted me to keep this thing here for 3 minutes. I looked up at SCP-096, its eyeless sockets somehow burning into me, its mouth stretched impossibly wide in an ear-splitting scream. My heart felt like it was going to burst. 3 minutes? I wouldn't survive 30 seconds. I scrambled to my feet, grabbing a chair and hurling it at the creature. It smashed against its bony chest, doing nothing but making it angrier. Its scream pierced my skull, a sound that wasn't just loud but wrong, like it came from inside my own head. I clutched my ears, blood trickling from my nose. I thought about Noah, about the way he'd looked at me, tears streaming down his little face, whispering Dad, that thought, that memory was the only thing keeping me from breaking completely. If I was going to die here, I'd make it count. The thing lunged again, and I dove to the side, narrowly avoiding its claws. My body slammed into a row of lockers, the impact rattling my teeth. My rifle was gone, tossed across the room in the chaos. I was out of weapons, out of options. Except one. My hand went to my belt, fumbling for the emergency incendiary grenade. It was supposed to be a last resort measure, used to burn evidence or destroy sensitive materials. Using it here would be suicide, but suicide was all I had left. I pulled the pin and held it close to my chest. "Come on," I muttered through gritted teeth, staring down the monster as it crouched to strike. "You want me? Then come and get me." It didn't hesitate. Time slowed as it lunged, its claws outstretched, its gaping mouth screaming bloody murder. I saw every horrific detail, the jagged teeth, the sinewy muscles twitching under its pale skin, the impossible hatred in its non-eyes. And then I let go. The explosion was deafening. A wave of searing heat engulfed us both, and for a brief moment I felt weightless. Pain bloomed across my body, white hot and absolute, and then nothing, just silence. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't dead. At least I didn't think I was. The world was blurry, the edges of my vision swimming with darkness. I could hear muffled voices, the crackle of a radio, and the distant roar of engines. "Fox Leader, do you copy?" Command. They sounded far away, like they were speaking through water. I tried to answer, but my throat felt like sandpaper. All I could manage was a weak croak. "Extraction team is inbound," the voice continued. "Airstrike neutralized the anomaly. Civilians are secure." "Civilians, Noah." My vision cleared just enough to see them, my squad, carrying Noah out of the school. He was safe. Alive. Tears welled in my eyes as I let the darkness take me. If this was the end, at least I'd done my job. At least I'd saved my son. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. The world outside the window was still twisted and wrong, but the school was gone, replaced by a smoking crater. They told me I'd survived by some miracle, though my body was broken beyond repair. They didn't tell me what happened to SCP-096. Maybe it was gone. Maybe it wasn't. Noah visits me sometimes. He doesn't talk much, just sits by my bed, holding my hand, his eyes haunted by things no kid should ever have to see. I wish I could tell him it'll all be okay, that the monsters are gone, that he's safe now, but I can't, because I know better. The monsters aren't gone. They never are. I never thought I'd be telling this story. I mean, who would believe a 15-year-old kid like me if I said we nearly died in an abandoned government building? And the worst part? There was a monster hunting us down while an elite team from some top-secret organization tried to contain it. Sounds like something from a bad horror movie, right? But trust me, it was all real. This is the night I'll never forget. It all started when my best friend Jake dragged me into this stupid idea of sneaking into an abandoned government building. We had heard rumors about it, whispers from older kids, strange sightings and wild stories of things that shouldn't be in a place like that. Some said it was haunted, some said it was dangerous, but neither of us cared. It was just another night, another place to explore. We'd been planning it for weeks. After school, we met up in the parking lot by the old bridge. The building was about 10 miles out, hidden deep in the woods. No one really talked about it much. The government had shut it down years ago, and all that was left were the stories. Jake was hyped up. He had his flashlight, and I had my phone, the only light source we'd need to get through the night. "Come on, this is gonna be awesome," Jake said, pushing open the rusted iron gate. The lock was broken, like it hadn't been touched in ages. We stepped inside, the cold night air swallowing us whole. It was eerie. Silent, except for the sound of our footsteps crunching on the gravel. I tried to shake the feeling in the pit of my stomach. Something about this place didn't feel right. And I didn't want to start an investigation about a property that looks like this and, "Let's go," Jake whispered, his voice full of excitement. "It's just a building. What's the worst that could happen?" I didn't have time to answer. A loud bang echoed from inside the building, and I froze. Jake turned, eyes wide, but I could tell he was just as nervous as I was now. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. He nodded, and we both slowly crept toward the entrance. The door creaked when we pushed it open. The building smelled of mold and decay, the air thick with dust. It was pitch black inside, except for the faint glow of our flashlights. We moved cautiously down the long hallway, the walls cracked and peeling. There was a strange hum in the air, like some kind of electrical buzz that never stopped. We came to a door at the end of the hall. Jake pushed it open, revealing a massive room filled with old equipment. Rusted metal, broken glass, and old computers littered the floor. "What is all this stuff?" I asked, shining my flashlight across the room. Jake's voice dropped to a whisper. I don't know, but we should look around. There has to be something cool in here. I didn't like the sound of it. The room felt too wrong. Like someone had been here recently. Suddenly, a noise came from the far corner of the room. Scraping, dragging, like something was moving in the dark. "Did you hear that?" I asked, voice trembling. Jake nodded, but he didn't want to show it. "Probably just a rat or something." But I knew it wasn't. We weren't alone. Before I could say anything else, a deep, guttural growl rumbled from the darkness, sending chills down my spine. My heart stopped for a second, and Jake's face went pale. I grabbed his arm, pulling him back toward the door. "Run!" I shouted. We bolted down the hallway, the echo of our footsteps growing louder, until the growl came again, closer this time. I could feel it. Whatever was out there was getting closer. We turned a corner and ran into a group of soldiers. No, not soldiers. They were too calm, too organized to be ordinary people. They were wearing black tactical gear, their faces hidden behind masks. One of them stepped forward holding a rifle. "Are you two kids crazy?" the man asked, his voice sharp. "Get behind us, now." We didn't question it. We ran behind them, following their orders without hesitation, but it was too late. A roar split the air and the lights flickered out. The soldier in front of us shouted orders into a radio, but his voice was drowned out by the monstrous growl. Suddenly, the creature appeared. A massive, twisted figure, standing on two legs like a man, but its body stretched and deformed. Its skin was slick grayish-black, covered in scars and open wounds. Its eyes glowed a sickly yellow, and its mouth... God, its mouth was filled with rows of jagged teeth that clicked and clattered as it snarled. The soldiers opened fire, but the creature barely flinched. It moved like lightning, darting toward them with a speed that didn't seem possible for something so massive. "Run!" one of the soldiers screamed, but it was too late. Jake and I didn't need to be told twice. We took off running, dodging and weaving through the hallways. I could hear the creature's footsteps behind us, thumping against the floor, the walls shaking with every step it took. The sounds of gunfire and screaming filled the air. I could only hope the soldiers had some way to stop it, but in that moment, I knew we were on our own. We burst out of the building into the cold night air, gasping for breath. The creature didn't follow us outside. It was still inside, but I knew that wasn't the end of it. It wouldn't stop. Jake was shaking, his face pale, and his eyes wide with fear. What the hell was that thing? "I don't know," I said, trying to catch my breath. But I think we just stumbled into something that we were never meant to see. We didn't look back as we ran. We didn't stop until we were far away, until the building was nothing but a dark silhouette against the night sky. The last thing I heard that night wasn't the creature. It was the sound of helicopters overhead, and the faint voice of a radio crackling in the distance, a voice that said, "We've got a breach. Mobile Task Force Data 9 has been deployed." But by then, it was too late. We'd already seen what was inside, and we'd never be able to forget. I'll never go near that building again. Not for anything. Some things are better left alone. Have you ever woken up one day and felt like the whole world had shifted while you were asleep? That's what happened to me and my brother Jake. Only it wasn't just a feeling, it was real, and it was terrifying. It started on a regular Tuesday morning, the kind of day where nothing special is supposed to happen. The sun was out, the birds were chirping, and Mom yelled at us to hurry up because we were going to miss the bus. Jake and I grabbed our bags and rushed out the door, still half asleep and grumbling about how much we hated history class. If I'd known what was coming, I would have begged to stay home. Our high school looked the same as always: plain brick walls, a flagpole out front, and a bunch of kids huddled together in cliques. Jake and I made it to class just in time, sliding into our seats as the bell rang. Mr. Carter, our history teacher, was already writing on the board. But something was off. "Today's lesson is on the glorious Soviet victory in the Cold War," he said, his voice flat and robotic. I blinked. Soviet victory? Jake and I exchanged a quick glance. We'd both aced the Cold War unit last year. We knew how it ended. NATO stood strong, the Berlin Wall fell, and the Soviet Union collapsed. "What are you talking about?" Jake blurted out. "The Soviets didn't win the Cold War." Mr. Carter froze. Slowly he turned to face us, his expression blank, but his eyes burning with something I couldn't quite place. "Incorrect, Jake," he said. "History is written by the victors, and the Soviets emerged victorious. Now sit quietly, or you'll be sent to the correctional room." The correctional room? That wasn't a thing, was it? Things only got stranger from there. The textbooks on our desks weren't the ones we'd used last week. These were bright red, with a hammer and sickle stamped on the cover. Jake flipped one open and gasped. "The United States surrendered in 1991, he read aloud. "Soviet forces, aided by infernal entities, overwhelmed NATO defenses, securing global dominance." "Infernal entities," I whispered. Jake nodded, his face pale. "Monsters from hell. Apparently. This book's talking about demons like it's normal history, as if the Soviet Union cut a deal with the devil." The more we read, the more everything we thought we knew unraveled. The Soviet Union hadn't collapsed, it had thrived, conquering most of the world. The US was reduced to a shadow of itself, a puppet state under Soviet control. And the monsters? They were everywhere, enforcing the new order. When the bell rang, Jake and I bolted out of the classroom, desperate to clear our heads. But the hallway wasn't any better. The posters on the walls were covered in Soviet propaganda, urging us to obey and serve the greater good. The American flag by the principal's office was gone, replaced with a red banner. And the students, they weren't acting normal. They moved in eerie synchronization, their eyes glazed over like they weren't entirely human. "Something's seriously wrong," Jake said, pulling me aside. "This isn't just a prank or a bad dream we're in. I don't even know what." By lunchtime, we decided to test the outside world. We slipped out of the school through the back door, our hearts racing. The town we'd grown up in was unrecognizable. The streets were patrolled by monstrous creatures with twisted, skeletal bodies and glowing red eyes. Soviet banners hung from every building, and the sky, oh God, the sky, it wasn't blue anymore. It was a deep, swirling red, like we were trapped under a blood-stained dome. "We need to find Mom and Dad," Jake said, his voice shaking. We ran home as fast as we could, dodging patrols and trying not to look too long at the monsters stalking the streets. When we finally got there, our house looked the same on the outside, but inside it was like stepping into a nightmare. Our parents were sitting at the kitchen table, staring straight ahead. They didn't react when we called their names. It was like they were frozen, their faces pale and lifeless. "Mom?" Dad, Jake tried shaking them, but they didn't move. Then a voice echoed through the house, deep, guttural, and full of malice. "They belong to us now." We spun around, and there was a hulking, demonic figure towering over us, its horns scraping the ceiling. Its eyes burned like molten lava, and its jagged teeth twisted into a wicked grin. "You're not supposed to be here," it growled. "This world is not for you." Jake grabbed my arm, and we bolted out the door, the creature's laughter echoing behind us. "What do we do now?" I gasped as we sprinted down the street. Jake didn't answer. He just kept running, his face set with determination. I didn't know where we were going, but I trusted him. We were the only ones who seemed to remember the world the way it was supposed to be. Everyone else had either been brainwashed or turned into something inhuman. But we weren't giving up. Somehow we were going to fight back. Somehow we were going to find the truth. Even if it killed us,